I had spent months planning my dream baby shower. Every tiny detail mattered: the pastel balloons, the baby blue tablecloths, the flower wall with the gold sign that said, "Welcome, Baby Carter." I wanted the day to be perfect, something warm and joyful before the chaos of motherhood began. My friends had helped me decorate the living room, my sister was in charge of the cake, and my husband Mark had promised to keep his mother Diane from taking over the event. That last part, however, would soon prove impossible. I was 7 months pregnant, moving slower than usual, but my heart was light that morning. I wore a soft pink dress that hugged my belly gently. I wanted to feel radiant, calm, loved. When I looked around the room, everything seemed to shine with that energy: the gentle laughter of my friends, the soft music, the scent of roses drifting through the air. But then the doorbell rang. Everyone turned their heads at once. Mark went to answer it, smiling nervously. When he opened the door, the entire room seemed to freeze. Diane stepped inside wearing a white dress. Not just any dress, it was long, lacy, almost bridal. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she carried a bouquet of white lilies. For a second, I thought she'd gotten the wrong event. My heart stuttered in my chest as whispers rippled through the guests. "Oh my God," my sister muttered under her breath. Diane smiled sweetly, scanning the room. "Well, doesn't this look lovely?" she said, her voice dripping with confidence. Then her eyes found mine, and the smile sharpened into something else, something that made my stomach twist. Mark looked mortified. "Mom, I thought you said you were wearing something simple." "Oh, this is simple," she said with mock innocence. "It's just a little white dress. It's not like I'm the bride." She chuckled, but no one laughed. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that this was supposed to be a happy day. I forced a polite smile and greeted her. "Hi, Diane. I'm glad you could make it." Her eyes flicked to my belly, then back to my face. "Oh dear, you look so tired," she said, brushing a piece of imaginary lint from my sleeve. "Maybe I should take over greeting the guests." "You just sit down and rest, okay?" It was subtle, but I felt the shift immediately, as if she had taken control of the room with a single sentence. The next hour passed in a blur. Diane fluttered from group to group, introducing herself as though she were the hostess. She directed the servers, rearranged the gift table, even started posing for photos in front of my banner. When one of my friends asked for a picture with me, Diane quickly stepped in, standing beside me and resting her hand on my stomach. I could feel her nails lightly pressing into my skin through the fabric. "Smile, everyone," she said cheerfully, her grin wide and unshakable. Inside, I was boiling, but I didn't want to make a scene. Not in front of all those people, not when Mark had promised me he'd handle her. So I took a deep breath and pretended everything was fine. But something about her behavior was off. She wasn't just being overbearing, she was performing. Every gesture, every word was deliberate. When someone asked me about the baby's name, Diane answered before I could speak. "We've decided on Carter," she said, beaming. "We?" The word hit me like ice water. Mark shot her a look, but she ignored it. She turned toward a couple of her friends, laughing softly. "It feels like my baby all over again," she said, her hand resting on my stomach once more. I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself, pretending to need the restroom, and stepped into the hallway. My heart pounded as I tried to steady my breathing. Was I overreacting? Maybe it was just hormones. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. But when I returned a few minutes later, the atmosphere had shifted even more. Diane was now standing at the center of the room, holding a microphone. I froze as I realized she was giving a speech. "Everyone," she began, smiling graciously. "Thank you for coming today to celebrate the arrival of our little miracle." My mouth went dry. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to make of her words. Diane continued, her tone tender and theatrical. "You all know how much this baby means to me. Ever since I found out, I felt like my heart was reborn. It's been years since I had a child of my own, and now I finally get to experience it again." I felt my stomach twist. She turned toward me, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, darling, for giving me this gift." The room erupted in awkward applause, hesitant and confused. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. I just stood there, frozen, my hands trembling at my sides. Something inside me cracked. This wasn't just her being dramatic. This was something deeper, darker. The way she looked at me, the way she spoke, it was as if she wanted to be me. And in that chilling moment, surrounded by fake smiles and whispered gossip, I realized the truth. Diane wasn't just trying to steal the spotlight. She was trying to replace me. The room was filled with polite, uneasy laughter after Diane's speech, the kind of laughter people use when they don't know if something is funny or horrifying. I stood there, frozen, my hands trembling as I tried to process what had just happened. The sound of clinking glasses and forced smiles barely covered the tension that had settled in the air like smoke. I could feel everyone's eyes flicking between us, the real mother-to-be, and the woman trying to act like one. My baby shifted inside me, almost as if he could sense my unease. I wrapped my arms protectively around my belly, instinctively trying to create a barrier between Diane and me. "Mom," Mark said quietly, trying to diffuse the situation. "That was a nice speech, but maybe we should." "Oh, hush," Diane interrupted, giving him a dismissive wave. "You know how emotional I get. I just wanted to say how proud I am. This day is so special for us." She emphasized the last word again, us. I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't move. I could feel heat rising in my face, embarrassment mixed with fury. "Diane," I said softly, stepping closer. "That was unexpected, but this is supposed to be my day. Maybe let's keep the focus on the baby and me, okay?" For a moment, her expression froze. Then she laughed, a sound too sharp to be genuine. "Oh, of course, dear. You're absolutely right," she said sweetly, but her eyes were cold. "I wouldn't dream of stealing your thunder." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, making it sound like I was the unreasonable one. A few guests chuckled awkwardly. I wanted to disappear. Mark put his hand on my back. "Honey, maybe take a little break. I'll handle things." I nodded and stepped outside onto the porch, breathing in the cool air. I could hear the muffled chatter inside, the laughter that felt like it was directed at me. I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself. But my peace didn't last long. From the open window, I could hear Diane's voice again, low but distinct. "She's just not ready for motherhood," she said. "You can see it, can't you? She's so emotional, so fragile. The stress might be too much for her." My chest tightened. "She'll learn," Mark replied softly, his voice uncertain. Diane sighed. "Maybe, but the baby deserves stability. Someone who knows how to raise a child, someone who's done it before." My heart nearly stopped. Was she implying what I thought she was implying? I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from gasping. The woman inside that house, the one laughing and smiling, was planning something far beyond a baby shower. When I walked back inside, I tried to act normal. The party continued, but the energy was off. I could feel her eyes on me every time I moved. When someone asked me about my pregnancy, she'd interrupt with stories about her motherhood, how she handled sleepless nights, how she bonded instantly with her babies, how she couldn't wait to relive it all. It was suffocating. And then came the moment that changed everything. One of my friends, Lisa, called everyone's attention. "Okay, time for the baby shower games," she said, holding a basket of tiny slips of paper. "Everyone write down a piece of advice for the new mom." The guests cheered and began writing. Diane sat across from me, smiling sweetly, pen in hand. I tried to ignore her and focus on chatting with my friends, but I could feel her watching me the entire time. When it was time to read the notes aloud, Lisa began collecting them. "Let's see what we've got here," she said, laughing as she read through a few funny ones. "Don't forget to sleep when the baby sleeps. Never trust a diaper without checking. Don't let Grandma spoil them too much." Everyone laughed. Then she picked up another note, the handwriting elegant and precise. Lisa's smile faltered. Okay. This one says," she cleared her throat, "if you're not capable of being a good mother, someone else will be happy to take your place." The room went dead silent. All eyes turned toward Diane. She didn't even flinch, just smiled calmly, sipping her champagne as if she'd said nothing at all. My throat went dry. "Did you write that?" I whispered. Diane met my gaze, her eyes gleaming. "Oh, darling, it's just a bit of tough love. You know I only want what's best for the baby." The guests started murmuring. I saw pity in some faces, discomfort in others. Mark's jaw was tight, but he said nothing. Nothing. Tears burned in my eyes. "That was cruel," I said, my voice trembling. Her expression softened, fake sympathy dripping from every word. "You're so sensitive these days. Hormones, I suppose." That broke me. I pushed back my chair and stood up. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone. You've made this entire day about you." Gasps filled the room. Mark reached for me, but I stepped back. "No, Mark. You promised me this wouldn't happen again." His eyes darted between us helplessly. "Mom, maybe it's time for you to go." Diane froze. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, firmer this time. "This was supposed to be about her. You've gone too far." For a brief moment, victory flickered inside me, but it was short-lived. Diane's face twisted, her calm facade cracking. "You'll regret embarrassing me like this," she hissed quietly, her words sharp enough for only us to hear. "You think you can take my place in this family? You're just a guest, dear." The real mother always comes first, and with that, she picked up her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the decorations trembled. Everyone was silent. I stood there, shaking my hand over my stomach. The party was over, but deep down, I knew something had just begun. Because the way she looked at me before leaving, cold, calculating, possessive, told me that this wasn't the end of her obsession. It was only the beginning. The days after the baby shower were eerily quiet. Too quiet. I tried to tell myself that Diane's behavior was just a moment of madness, that maybe she'd realize how wrong she'd been and apologize, but she didn't. Instead, she disappeared, no calls, no visits, nothing. At first it was a relief. I could finally breathe again. The house felt lighter without her presence hovering over every decision. Mark and I spent our evenings talking about the baby's room, painting the walls a soft sky blue, assembling the crib together. For the first time in months, I felt a little hope return. But peace never lasts long when someone like Diane is involved. It started with small, unsettling things. One morning, when I stepped outside to pick up the mail, I found an envelope wedged into the crack of the front door. No return address. Inside was a single photo me, at the baby shower, standing awkwardly beside Diane. On the back, someone had written in neat cursive handwriting, "A mother's place can't be replaced." My stomach dropped. When I showed it to Mark, he frowned. "It's probably a prank," he said. "Maybe one of your friends thought it'd be funny." "Funny?" I snapped. "You think that's funny?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're stressed. You need rest. Mom's not crazy. She's just emotional." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I tucked the photo away in my drawer, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But the messages didn't stop. The next day, I got another note in the mailbox, then another. Each one more disturbing than the last. "A baby deserves the right mother. You're not ready to raise him. Don't fight nature." All unsigned, all in the same elegant handwriting. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made my heart jump: the wind, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator. I finally drifted off around dawn, but when I woke up, something felt off. The nursery door was open. I knew I'd closed it the night before. Inside, the rocking chair was swaying gently, as if someone had just been sitting in it. My breath caught. I stepped closer, noticing something small on the chair's cushion, a single pearl earring. Diane's earring. I ran to the bedroom, shaking Mark awake. "She's been here," I whispered, holding the earring out. He blinked at me groggily. "What are you talking about? Your mother." "She was in the nursery." Mark sat up, frowning. "That's impossible. She doesn't even have a key." I glared at him. "You gave her 1 month ago, remember? When I was still pregnant." He hesitated. "She wouldn't what, Mark? Sneak into our home in the middle of the night? Leave threats in our mailbox? Try to replace me?" My voice was rising now. "She would. You saw what she did at the baby shower." He ran his hands through his hair, frustration clouding his face. "I'll talk to her," he finally said. But I could see the doubt in his eyes. Not in her, in me. That broke something inside me. I didn't wait for him to talk to her. I went straight to her house the next day, heart pounding with a mix of anger and fear. Her car was parked in the driveway, but when I knocked, no one answered. I called her name, my voice echoing in the quiet morning air. When I turned to leave, I noticed movement inside through the window, just a flicker, like someone stepping back into the shadows. I tried the door. It was unlocked. "Diane?" I called softly, stepping inside. The air smelled of perfume and something faintly metallic, like old blood or rust. Her living room was spotless, unnervingly so. Family photos lined the mantel, Mark as a boy, Diane holding him, holidays, birthdays. But in every single one, there was something strange. No photos of me, none of our wedding, no sign that I'd ever existed. It was as if she had erased me entirely. Then I saw a new photo on the wall. It was from the baby shower, blown up into a large framed print. Diane was smiling brightly, her hands resting on my pregnant belly. I wasn't even smiling in it. I looked uncomfortable, but she didn't seem to notice or care. And beneath it, on the coffee table, lay a folder. Curiosity won over fear. I opened it. Inside were printed papers, hospital registration forms, prenatal documents, even ultrasound copies. My name had been crossed out with a red marker. In its place, Diane Morgan. My knees nearly gave out. I heard the sound of footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, coming down the hall. I turned around. Diane stood there, holding a cup of tea as if nothing was wrong. Her eyes sparkled with a twisted calm. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. My voice shook. "What is this? What are you doing?" She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Just preparing. A real mother plans ahead." "That's insane," I whispered. Her expression hardened. "You don't understand, do you? You've never understood Mark, not the way I do. You don't know what's best for him, or for our baby." "Our baby?" I repeated, horrified. She took a step closer. "You're weak, fragile. You faint, you cry, you panic. That baby needs someone stronger, someone stable." I backed away. "You're sick, and you're unfit," she said coldly. I didn't wait to hear more. I turned and ran out the door, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. When I reached the car, My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. As I drove away, I could still see her through the rearview mirror standing in her doorway, smiling, one hand resting protectively on her stomach, as if she were the one expecting. That image haunted me for nights, and somehow, deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Diane wasn't done with me yet. She'd lost control once. But she was coming back, and next time, she wouldn't settle for just pretending. She'd take everything. The baby came early. It was supposed to be a peaceful morning. I'd planned to rest, maybe read a little, and distract myself from the nightmares that had plagued me for weeks. But around dawn, I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen that made me double over. My heart raced as the contractions came faster and stronger. Mark rushed me to the hospital, his hands trembling as he drove, but all I could think about was one thing. Would Diane show up? I didn't want her anywhere near me. When we reached the hospital, nurses rushed me into a delivery room. Between the pain and the fear, I felt like I was floating in and out of consciousness. Mark was beside me, whispering words of comfort, but his voice felt distant, like he was on the other side of a glass wall. Hours passed in a blur of bright lights, cries, and exhaustion. Then, finally, I heard a small, fragile cry that made my heart stop. The nurse smiled. "It's a boy," she said. Tears filled my eyes as they placed him in my arms. My baby. My beautiful baby. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and for a moment the world felt still and safe again. I looked up at Mark, expecting to see pride in his eyes, but instead he looked tense, nervous. Before I could ask, the door opened. Diane walked in, wearing a pale pink dress, her hair perfectly styled, holding a bouquet of flowers so large it nearly covered her face. "Diane," I said weakly, clutching the baby tighter. "What are you doing here?" She smiled sweetly. "I came to see my grandson, of course." I glanced at Mark, silently begging him to say something to protect me, to set a boundary, but he just shifted uncomfortably and muttered, "Mom, maybe give us a minute." "Oh, don't be silly," she said, brushing past him. "This is a family moment." She leaned down, her perfume overwhelming, and touched the baby's cheek. "Oh, he looks just like his father," she said softly. Then, after a pause, her eyes met mine. "But don't worry, dear. I'll make sure he grows up right." I froze. Her tone was calm, but her words felt like a threat. The nurse came in to check on me, breaking the tension. Diane stayed for hours, talking as if she were the one who had given birth. She told stories about how she'd raised Mark without help, about how she knew what babies needed, and how she could stay over for a few weeks to make sure everything went smoothly. Every word felt like another knife twisting deeper. When she finally left that evening, I collapsed into tears. Mark rubbed my back, but his silence spoke louder than words. He wasn't going to stop her, and he didn't. 2 days later, Diane showed up at our house, bags in hand, smiling as if she owned the place. "You'll need help," she announced. "I've already cleared out the guest room." Before I could protest, she added, Mark insisted. I looked at him in disbelief, but he avoided my gaze. The first few nights were chaos. I was exhausted, barely sleeping, trying to nurse, trying to heal, trying to adjust. But every time I reached for my baby, Diane was there first. She'd swoop in, lift him up, hum to him softly, and say things like, "See, he knows who loves him most." I felt invisible. One night, I woke to the sound of whispering through the baby monitor. I listened closer. It was Diane's voice, soft, rhythmic, like she was singing. But then I heard her words. "You don't have to cry, sweetheart," she murmured. "Grandma's here. Grandma will always protect you. Mommy doesn't understand you the way I do." My chest tightened. I quietly got out of bed and walked down the hall. The nursery door was open just a crack. Through it, I saw her sitting in the rocking chair, holding my baby against her chest. She wasn't wearing her usual sweet expression. Her face looked empty. Her eyes were fixed on the wall as she rocked, whispering to him over and over, "You're mine. You've always been mine." I stepped inside, my voice shaking. "Give him to me." She didn't move. "Diane," I said more firmly, "put him down." Finally, she looked at me, and for the first time, there was something dark in her eyes, something almost hateful. "You shouldn't sneak up on people," she said quietly. "I heard you," I whispered. "You're scaring me." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "I'm doing what you can't. Taking care of him. You're weak, always have been." I wanted to scream, but the baby whimpered, and I froze. My whole body was shaking. Mark appeared behind me, bleary-eyed. "What's going on?" "Your mother," I began, but Diane quickly stood, handing the baby to him. "She's exhausted," she said smoothly. "Postpartum hormones. She's been paranoid all week." Mark frowned at me. "You need rest, honey. You're not yourself." My throat tightened. "You believe her?" He sighed. "She's trying to help." Diane placed a hand on his arm, looking at me with a smug calm. "I'll take the night shift," she said. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down my face, realizing the horrible truth. I was losing my baby not physically, but emotionally. Diane was slowly replacing me, just like she'd wanted all along. And worst of all, no one believed me, but I wasn't going to let her win. If she thought she could take my child, if she thought she could erase me from my own family, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Because something inside me had changed that night. Fear was gone. All that was left was fury. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house made my heart jump: the creak of the hallway floor, the soft hum of the baby monitor, the faint, eerie lullabies that Diane hummed under her breath. By morning, my exhaustion had turned into something sharper focus. If no one was going to believe me, I'd make them see the truth. When Diane took the baby for his morning cuddle, I quietly set up my phone in the nursery, propping it behind a stack of diapers with the camera pointed toward the crib. I told myself it wasn't paranoia, it was proof. A few hours later, I heard her voice through the monitor again. Calm, sweet, manipulative. "You're my little boy," she whispered. "Not hers. Mommy doesn't understand you. She doesn't love you the way Grandma does. I'll make sure you're safe, always." I felt sick. That was enough. When she left the room to make lunch, I rushed in, grabbed my phone, and replayed the video. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. There she was, her face close to the baby's, whispering those awful words, smiling like she believed every one of them. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't want it to be true. I wanted to believe she was just overbearing, not delusional. But the video told me otherwise. When Mark got home that evening, I waited for the right moment. Diane was in the kitchen, humming as she prepared dinner like everything was perfectly normal. "Mark," I said, my voice trembling but firm, "you need to see something." He looked tired, already defensive. "What is it now?" I pressed play. For a moment, the room was silent except for Diane's voice from the video. When the recording ended, Mark blinked, staring at the screen as if trying to process what he'd just heard. That's not what it sounds like," he muttered. "Are you serious?" I snapped. "She's telling our son I don't love him. She's trying to replace me." Before he could answer, Diane walked in, wiping her hands on a towel. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Mark turned to her, his face pale. "Mom, what is this?" She glanced at the phone, then at me. Her smile faltered, but only for a second. "Oh, that," she said lightly. "Just a misunderstanding. I was comforting the baby. You know how emotional new mothers can get. I couldn't believe it. She was so calm, so confident, like she'd rehearsed this moment." Mark ran a hand through his hair, caught between us. "Mom, that didn't sound right." "Oh, honey," she interrupted softly, touching his arm. "She's trying to turn you against me. You know I'd never do anything to hurt this family." I stepped forward, fury boiling in my chest. "You are hurting this family. You've been lying, manipulating, pretending this baby is yours. You showed up to my shower in a white dress. You told people you were expecting." "That's not true," she gasped, feigning shock. "Mark, she's making things up again. Stop it," I shouted. "Stop pretending." The baby started crying in the other room. Diane immediately moved toward the sound, but I blocked her path. "No," I said, my voice low. "You don't go near him." Her mask slipped then, just for a heartbeat. Her eyes went cold. "You're not fit to be a mother," she hissed under her breath. "You're weak. He deserves better." Mark froze. He'd heard it too this time. "What did you just say?" he whispered. Diane blinked, trying to recover. "I didn't." "Don't," he said, his voice breaking. "Just don't." She looked between us, her expression twisting, first confusion, then anger, then something darker. "You're letting her poison you against me," she said to him. "After everything I've done for you, after I raised you alone, after I—" "Mom, stop!" Mark's voice cracked like a whip. "You need to leave." For a second, I thought she might explode. Her hands trembled, her lips curled into a bitter smile. "You'll regret this," she said quietly, "both of you." Then she walked out, slamming the door so hard the baby started wailing again. I scooped him up, holding him close as tears streamed down my face. Relief, fear, exhaustion all tangled together. Mark stood by the window, silent, staring at the driveway where her car had been parked. "She's gone," he said finally, his voice hollow. "For now." But the way he said it sent a chill through me, because deep down we both knew Diane wasn't done. A woman like her doesn't just disappear quietly. She'd lost control, and that made her dangerous. And as I rocked my baby to sleep that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still out there watching, waiting for her moment to strike back. Months passed. The house finally began to feel like a home again. The baby, our son Noah, was growing fast, filling our once tense rooms with laughter and warmth. I'd finally started to breathe again, though sometimes, when the wind rattled the windows at night, I'd still half expect to see her silhouette standing outside. After Diane left that day, Mark cut off contact. He blocked her number, changed the locks, even installed a camera at the front door. But deep down, I knew that kind of silence didn't mean peace. It meant something was waiting to break. And I was right. It started small. A card slipped into our mailbox with no return address. A mother never forgets her child. Then a package arrived, a white baby blanket embroidered with Noah's initials in perfect, delicate stitches. No note this time, but the smell of Diane's perfume lingered in the fabric. Mark's hands trembled when he held it. "She can't be here," he said quietly. "She wouldn't come back after what happened." But she had. I could feel it in my bones. A few nights later, I was putting Noah to bed when I noticed something odd on the baby monitor, a flicker of movement. I checked the hall, the windows, every lock. Nothing. Maybe it was my paranoia. Maybe I was just tired. But when I looked again, I saw it clearly. A figure at the edge of the crib's frame, standing perfectly still. By the time I ran upstairs, there was no one there. The window was open, and on the floor lay a white rose, Diane's favorite. That was the night I stopped pretending everything was okay. Mark wanted to call the police, but what could we say? My mother broke in to stare at the baby? There was no proof, no video, just fear. We barely slept that night. Mark moved Noah's crib into our room and sat awake by the window, staring into the darkness until sunrise. The next day, we went to my sister's house across town to stay for a few days, thinking some distance would help. But even there, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every passing car made my heart race. Then, one evening, as I was giving Noah a bath, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "Did you miss me?" It was her. My throat went dry. "Diane, what do you want?" She sighed softly, almost affectionately. "I just want to see my grandson. He needs me." "You've poisoned him against his real family." "He's my family," I whispered. "Stay away from us." Her voice dropped cold and low. You took everything from me. My son, my place, my purpose. You don't deserve that child. I'll get him back, one way or another. The line went dead. I stood there, frozen, my knees shaking. I called Mark immediately, and within an hour, the police were at the door. But again, no trace, no evidence. She's bluffing, Mark tried to reassure me that night, but his voice lacked conviction. 2 days later, we returned home. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had finally given up. But when I walked into Noah's nursery, my heart nearly stopped. The mobile above his crib had been replaced. Gone were the soft stars and clouds I'd hung. In their place, porcelain dolls, all with the same blank, lifeless stare. One of them wore a tiny white dress. I screamed. Mark rushed in, grabbed the dolls, and tore them down one by one, smashing them into the floor. She broke in again, he said, his voice trembling. She was here. That night, we left the house and went straight to a hotel. I held Noah close, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep, that he was safe, that his grandmother couldn't hurt him anymore. But as I drifted to sleep, I had the strangest dream. Diane standing at the foot of our bed, smiling that same cold maternal smile. You can't keep him from me, she whispered. He's mine too. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. Mark sat up beside me, rubbing his eyes. It's over, he murmured, trying to comfort me. We'll sell the house, move if we have to. We'll start over somewhere she can't find us. But just as he said it, there was a faint knock on the door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Mark froze. We both stared. The baby stirred in his crib. He got up quietly and opened the door, but the hallway was empty, except for one thing, a white envelope on the floor, sealed with a red wax heart. Inside, a handwritten note. You can run, but a mother always finds her family. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just obsession anymore. It was war, and I knew the next time Diane appeared, she wouldn't be leaving quietly. The morning after that note arrived, something inside me broke. For months, I'd been living in fear, jumping at every sound, checking locks twice, sleeping with lights on. But holding my baby that morning, watching his tiny chest rise and fall as the sunlight brushed across his cheeks, I realized I couldn't live like that anymore. I couldn't keep running. It was time to end it. Mark wanted to call the police again, but I knew that would do nothing. There was no proof, no fingerprints, no footage, just the trail of madness she left behind. So I made a decision I never thought I would. I went back to the house. It felt like walking into the ghost of our old life. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of dust and forgotten fear. Toys lay scattered across the living room, the remnants of the last time we tried to pretend things were normal. Mark insisted on going with me, but I told him to stay behind with Noah. If she comes for anyone, I said quietly, it'll be me. I parked outside just before sunset. The light hit the windows like fire, reflecting back at me cold and accusing. And then, as I stepped out of the car, I saw her, standing in the front yard, wearing white. Diane, I whispered, my heart pounding. She turned slowly, her eyes glinting with something wild, not anger, not sorrow, but something deeper, possession. "You came back," she said softly, almost smiling. "Good. I was worried you'd never let me say goodbye." "Goodbye?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You've been tormenting us, breaking in, threatening my child." Her expression hardened. "That's my grandchild, my blood. You've taken everything from me, my son, my family, my purpose. You were supposed to love me like a daughter, but you replaced me." "I didn't replace you," I said, my voice trembling. "You pushed yourself out. You tried to steal something that wasn't yours." For a moment, her face crumpled, grief flashing through her eyes like lightning before the storm. But then it was gone. "You don't deserve him," she hissed. "You don't even deserve Mark." And then she moved, so fast I barely had time to react. She lunged toward me, her hand clutching something, a small, sharp glint of metal. I stumbled backward, tripping over the steps, my body slamming against the porch rail. Pain shot through my arm as the knife clattered across the floorboards. "Diane, stop!" I screamed. "Please, you don't want to do this!" But her eyes were wild, her breathing ragged. "You've ruined everything," she shrieked. "He was supposed to love me. They were supposed to love me." And in that moment, as she stood trembling with rage, I saw the truth. This wasn't about me. It was about a woman who'd lost control of everything. Her son, her identity, her sanity. I grabbed the railing, forcing myself to stand, my whole body shaking. "You need help, Diane," I said softly, "but you're not getting near my son again." The sound of sirens pierced the air. Mark had followed me after all. Diane turned her head sharply toward the road, her face twisting with something like disbelief. "You called them?" "I didn't have to," I said. "He did." Mark came running up the driveway, shouting her name, pleading, almost, "Mom, stop this, please." But Diane didn't move. She just stared at us, at her son, at me with eyes that no longer looked human. When the police pulled into the driveway, red and blue lights flashing across the yard, she finally dropped the knife. It hit the ground with a dull clink that echoed in the silence. She looked at me one last time, her voice trembling. "You'll never understand what it's like to be forgotten by your own family." "I do," I whispered back, "because that's what you did to me." The officers took her gently but firmly by the arms, leading her toward the car. As they drove away, I felt the weight of months lift, replaced not with relief, but with sorrow. That night, Mark and I sat in Noah's nursery, holding each other in silence. The mobile turned slowly above his crib, stars and clouds again, soft and innocent. "She's getting help," Mark said finally. "They said she'll be evaluated, maybe sent to a treatment center." I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "I hope she finds peace." He looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. "And you?" I smiled faintly, brushing my hand across Noah's tiny fingers. "I already have it. Right here." Outside, the wind rattled the window one last time, soft, almost like a sigh. And though part of me would always carry the scars of what happened, I knew the darkness had finally lifted. For the first time in a long time, the house felt safe again, and this time it would stay that way.